Uh, Hello, guys. Welcome to our first presentation in a conference connecting minds. It's a conference which connected people who struggle with depression and people who every day help people who struggle with depression. And today, our first speaker, Lena Lima, is a people development consultant and counselor. Uh, she has supported a lot of individuals, nonprofit, and corporation by combining expertise in mental health counseling and practices to promote positive transformation in the people and companies. So I think you can start.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction, Dimitri. So today we're going to be talking about moving from reaction to response and how we can use mindfulness to reclaim our brain and reclaim our well-being. So just a brief overview of what we're going to learn today. I'll do a brief introduction on me. We'll talk about being an autopilot versus intention, safety and the brain, methods for reclaiming our well-being, exploration, self-knowing, and then we'll round off with some questions and giving you guys the opportunity to know how to connect. So a little bit about me, because I think it's important for you to understand my background and where my experiences come from. So I started off my career in psychology and counseling, working specifically in the behavioral mental health field. So doing a lot of work with families, doing live counseling in their homes in some pretty intensive situations. So that was a big part of where my counseling training came from. This included a lot of teaching about parenting and positive discipline. I later went into working in suicide prevention, doing a lot of public speaking and education around this. And while I was working on this mental health side, I was also developing further my mindfulness practices, becoming a yogic instructor, and then deepening my Reiki practice as well as a Reiki healer. I did a lot of work around education, public speaking. I got to be a pilgrim on the Camino de Santiago, which was a big both spiritual and developmental experience that I got to have. I went to work as a corporate trainer then, taking a lot of these mental health, behavioral health skills into the corporate world and talking about how we can develop leaders and employees, which led me to people operations, people development, and now I work as a consultant and counselor full-time, running my own practice. So it's about 14 of the past years really dedicated to growth, living and breathing it every day. So this is what I love to do for fun. So enough about me. Let's start talking about you guys. So I am a believer that the level to which we feel safe with ourselves is also the level to which we will explore ourselves and ultimately know ourselves. And the reason this is important is because the better we know who we are, the more connected we're going to feel to our sense of purpose, joy, fulfillment, and living a really conscious life. So by the end of this workshop, I'm going to loop back to that. What happens is that most of the time, though, as humans, we are living in autopilot. And what that means is that we're constantly trying to increase things that bring us ease, happiness, and satisfaction. And we try to avoid anything that could feel like effort, pain, or suffering, right? We try to run towards joy and away from suffering. What happens, though, is that when we're running in this autopilot mode, we don't necessarily recognize that things like effort or exploring some of our pain and our patterns is ultimately what leads us to increasing that sense of joy, fulfillment, and purpose. So we're going to talk about how we can come out of autopilot in ways that are safe and productive so that we can really start living an intentional life. So here's a little model that I developed around our human experience. So when we feel a sense of safety, we're able to go into exploration. Now, a lot of what holds people back from going into their exploration is this fear of that effort, discomfort, and challenge. Right? So a lot of folks will say, I can't meditate, it's too hard, or I don't want to go to therapy, I feel scared, I don't want to remember, I don't maybe want to uncover some of the trauma or the patterns that I've been living from. And so, because they're not feeling safe, they don't even make it to that place of exploration. And what happens once we self explore actually is that that leads us to self knowing. And so, in order for us to experience insights, discoveries, and our strengths, we have to go from exploration to self knowing. When we develop our self knowing, that's when we can really start living that life of purpose, motivation, flow, joy, fulfillment. And the more we experience those things, the safer we feel. The safer we feel, the more we explore, the more we self know, and that cycle gets to continue. So, a lot of times people just live in that safety zone, that comfort zone, right? That avoiding pain, avoiding effort. But it doesn't give them an opportunity to really fully develop. Their lack of safety keeps them living in patterns that they don't really want to experience. So you might encounter someone who says, I have this big dream, I'd really like to do it, but I can't because XYZ. Or I'm really unhappy in this relationship or in this job, but I can't leave it, I can't change it because. And so they're staying in that place of trying to be safe, but really it's holding them back from getting to live a really fulfilled life. So let's talk a little bit about safety and what gets in the way of our safety. And it's most often the mind. Our mind is our most powerful tool, and it can be used to either enslave us or to empower us. And how we choose to use our mind is what's going to determine our quality of life, right? So just keeping that in mind, that the mind can be used to enslave us, to hold us back, or it can be used to empower us and propel us forward to the type of life that we really want to live. So, why does this happen? Well, our mind is really good at remembering patterns and protecting us from danger. That is one of the biggest purposes of our brain. We're going to talk a little bit more here about the brain, but it's to keep us safe, it's to keep us alive. The issue with that is that our mind, our brain can sometimes perceive something as dangerous, and it'll kick off a protection response that doesn't really serve us. So you maybe have had experiences of this in where you feel anxious all of a sudden and you can't really pinpoint why. Or you might feel a lack of confidence in a situation that's actually harmless, but we perceive it as dangerous. So maybe this is public speaking, right? Maybe you want to get into presenting and sharing your knowledge, but your brain perceives public speaking as dangerous. And so you shut down, you close up. Maybe there's a person that you see walking on the street and you want to have the confidence to go up to them and talk to them. But your brain says, this person might reject me, therefore that feels dangerous. And you hold back. We go again into that protection response rather than fully living. So our brains are great, but because they are so great at trying to protect us, our brains aren't always the best at recognizing what is truly dangerous and what's not. Perhaps if you get an email from your boss and all of a sudden you notice a physiological response of, am I safe? Am I going to get fired? Am I going to get in trouble? Did I do something wrong? Right? And then that overthinking happens. It's just our mind perceiving danger that actually isn't there. So, what happens when we go into that perceived danger state? We typically respond with either fight, flight, freeze. I'm sure that all of you have heard these terms. And because we're in this space, we tend to react from a place of looking for survival rather than thriving, right? So with fight, if we perceive danger, we might raise our defenses, we might attack. Flight, again, this could be avoidance, right? Running away from a situation. And then freeze, we've all experienced that at times where we just freeze, we can't speak, our throat closes up. And again, this could be just to perceived danger. There's no actual real danger around us. So let's talk a little bit about the brain, what's happening here, and then most importantly, how it is that we can get our brain back online, back to feeling safe, so that we can move towards that life that we want to live, move towards exploration and self-knowing. So this was a model that was developed by Dr. Dan Siegel, and it's called Brain in the Palm of Your Hand. And specifically, we talk about this as flipping the lid. This is a model that you can use with children specifically. It works really well to explain this to them. So if you have kids and you notice that they have tantrums at times, by explaining this model, it can help them get a better grasp of their brain. And also, if you're somebody who experiences anxiety, overthinking, depression, having an understanding of your brain and how to get back into the driver's seat can really help. So, taking a look here at the brain in the palm of our hand, we can imagine that our wrist is our brainstem. And this is the part connected to our spine that's responsible for alertness, for sleep, for our heartbeat, and for all of our other involuntary body actions. We sometimes refer to this as our reptilian brain, and its sole purpose is to help keep us alive. Now, the next part is our thumb, right? And this is going to be in the central part of our brain, and we're going to refer to this as our limbic system. This is where our emotions are processed, and it also happens to be where a lot of our memory is stored. It's where our safety radar, the amygdala, resides. So I want you to think about this for a moment, that our emotions and our memory centers live really close together, right? And this goes back to communicating what we need to know for survival. So if we were on a hike and we were to see a mountain lion, right, this would trigger the memory of, ooh, mountain lions are dangerous, right? Now that danger is going to create that emotion of feeling unsafe. So it's going to trigger our safety radar. And then our brainstem here is going to take over. And that reptilian brain is going to say, I'm going to do whatever I need to for survival. Right? I'm going to pump blood to the legs so that we can run, or so that we can fight, or so that we can freeze. So this is where that danger sensory area is. Now, the outer part of our fist is where the cortex is, and it's where our planning and thinking happens. Our fingers can be our prefrontal cortex. This is where executive function resides. It's the part of the brain that processes incoming information and how we relate to those details and to others. It includes understanding about morality, other people's feelings, how to regulate our emotions, make choices, read body language, all of that. So this is, again, the area of how we relate to others, how we relate to ourselves. And this area is responsible for regulating how we respond. So a closed fist shows an emotionally regulated brain. The prefrontal cortex is connected to the limbic system and to the brainstem. So when our brain is online, this results in our ability to make rational and wise decisions. In other words, we are able to choose how we respond. So when we're feeling safe, when we're in flow, when we're relaxed, our lid is on. What happens is that when we perceive danger, when we feel angry or stressed or any of those really challenging emotions, because the brainstem and the limbic system takes over, our prefrontal cortex and amygdala disconnect. We flip our lid. And when this thinking part of our brain shuts down, it's no longer in charge of the rest of our brain. At this stage, we can't use our problem solving skills. We can't access our logic or our reasoning. And this is when we tend to make decisions that we may later regret. So the brain needs to take a breather to be able to reconnect and to remember that actually it is safe. So again, just a recap, when we feel unsafe, we flip our lids, we react from a place of trying to survive, and we can't think clearly or make rational decisions. So it's really important that when we notice that our lid is hinging, right, we might be feeling triggered by something, that we can put our lid back on before we make any decisions. Granted, if you are truly in an unsafe situation, if there really is a mountain lion, you flip that lid, you go into survival. But if this is a case of overthinking or anxiety due to maybe a social situation or, again, receiving an email, we want to flip our lid back on before we make any choices. So let's talk about how it is that we can move from that reaction to response and reclaim our brain. To flip our lid back on, we need to engage our mind and our body. We can do this by engaging in conscious breathing to slow our heart rate. So this is our way of telling our brain, hey, if I was actually unsafe, I wouldn't be able to pause and breathe slowly. So by just the fact that we engage the body and we choose our breathing, it sends a message to our brain to say, there's no real danger here. Everything's okay. Let's get our lid back online. So that's one way. Another way is to engage in visualization of an internal safe space. Right? So if we can create a sense of safety in our mind and in our body, then we're going to get that lid back on. And another thing is bilateral stimulation to facilitate easier access to positive memories, leading to significantly more relaxed states. So there's been a lot of great research done on bilateral stimulation, which we're going to practice here in a moment, and how when we can engage both hemispheres, the left and right hemisphere of the brain, we're able to come more into that relaxed state, a flow state, and again, trigger our entire brain and body to go back into that sense of safety. The safer we feel, the better we are able to make decisions. So one example of conscious breathing that you can practice is box breathing. So this is where we can start maybe with 4 seconds, where 4 seconds inhaling through the nose, 4 seconds of holding that breath, 4 seconds of exhaling through the nose, and 4 seconds of holding that breath out. So anytime you are feeling stressed, angry, danger, you start noticing that lid may flip. Just by pausing and engaging in this breath, you're able to have that physiological response of calming down. As we get better, we can increase the amount of time. So maybe we go to 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. But what we want to do is maintain consistency between each of those 4 parts of that box. So we inhale for 7 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, exhale 7 seconds, hold out for 7 seconds. So just repeating that will help you have an instant response of relaxation. Another practice is alternate nostril breathing. So this is where we can use our hands to block the different nostrils. And what we want to do is we want to move in through the left, then we block the left nostril, we breathe out through the right. And as we breathe out from the right, then we inhale again through the right and out through the left. So it tends to look a little bit like this. So inhaling, block, open the other side, exhale, Hold there. Now inhaling through this side. Block, open the other side, and exhale. So we just repeat this process, alternating from one side to the other. So whichever side you inhaled through, you're going to exhale on the other, inhale and exhale back. And again, this is going to have that same effect of stimulating both hemispheres of the brain, telling our brain, I'm totally safe, actually. There's no danger here because I've slowed down and I'm breathing. So, two very simple things that you can do anywhere that you are, anytime you're feeling any form of stress, anxiety. The other thing we can do is visualizing an internal safe space. This is a place that can be real or imaginary, but it's a place where you can feel safe, whole, and calm. We do this by building this imagery in our mind and noticing the colors, the smells, the temperatures, the shapes, the details. The more vivid that we can create this place in our mind, the better. And so, for some folks that I've worked with, that might be a quiet, calm beach. And they'll tell me that they notice the temperature of the sand. They'll try to feel the sensation of the sand beneath their feet. They'll look to the left and to the right and talk about what it is that they notice there. Right? Are there maybe cliffs nearby, or are there just more sandbanks? What's the color of the ocean? What's the rate of the waves coming in? What's the temperature of the air? What do you notice that you're smelling? So by really engaging all of the senses in this imaginary place, again, a place where we feel safe, whole, and calm, is really helpful. And then I like to have people come up with one word that they can name this place. And the reason for that is that we want to be able to have a verbal cue that takes us back into that space. It's really helpful to have somebody guiding you through this meditation so that you can create this internal safe space. But if that's not accessible to you, it's okay. You can create this for yourself by going into a quiet space, removing any distractions, and guiding yourself using these instructions. Now, what we want to do is to combine this now with a physical or sensory experience. And we can do this through an activity called the butterfly hug. And what we do is we cross our arms in front of our chest and we place our fingertips touching opposite collarbones. So again, this is to help engage both hemispheres of the brain. And from here, we're going to imagine, again, that internal safe space with all of those lovely details. We're going to slow down our breathing. We're going to be really intentional with that slow breath. And then we're going to slowly tap left, right, left, right, left, right. We want to keep this really slow, really steady, again, with that mindful breath. And sometimes doing this about 7 to 8 times can be enough, or just doing this until we really feel a sense of calm. So again, as we do this, we're combining our breathing, our internal safe space, and we're engaging in that bilateral stimulation. So when we combine all of these things, it gives us the opportunity to really engage the mind and the body and remembering that we are safe and that we are in control. So I like to prescribe this to people to practice this 1 to 2 times a day when they're feeling good to start off. And the reason that we want to do this when we're in a good state is that we want to start anchoring this strong connection between the visualization, the verbal cue, that one word to name your safe space, and that somatic stimulus to trigger our mind and body into a state of relaxation. Now, if we do this enough times where we can start training ourselves to feel safety by doing this, now we can start moving into exploration. We know that even if when we're exploring, things start to feel a little uncomfortable, a little scary, if some big thoughts or some distressing memories come up, we can pause and we can re engage our sense of safety. So it's kind of a way of thinking about if on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 means you feel deeply relaxed and very safe, and 10 is where you're feeling very anxious, distressed, fear, right? As we go into our exploration and we go deeper into some of our past wounds, past trauma, our sense of safety might decrease and we might move more and more towards that sense of danger. So, as soon as we start getting to about that 5 threshold, 5, 6 on that scale of 1 to 10, we want to start engaging our safe space to bring us back down to a 4, 3, 2, 1. In this way, we don't move too fast towards our exploration. We only do this journey in a way where we feel safe and we can always bring ourselves back. Now, different ways that we can explore, right? So we've talked about how we recreate that sense of safety in ourselves. And once we're in a place that we know that we can go into exploration, there are so many different examples for ways to self-explore. I like to practice core beliefs counseling. So this is engaging people in a theta state where they can dive deeper into the subconscious and look at their core beliefs. Look at what are the patterns that are driving their decision making and their behaviors every day. We can engage in Reiki, a beautiful energy practice that is gentle, loving, and very powerful. We can work with somebody who is an expert in neuro-linguistic programming. We can speak to a hypnotherapist. We can engage in journaling. This is one of my favorite things to do. I encourage it from everyone that I work with. And the reason for that is that when we're journaling, we are engaging the mind and the body. We are asking ourselves questions, and it's a really gentle and safe way to explore our thoughts, our feelings, and to get to know ourselves. We can do inner child reparenting work. So combining this with that core beliefs counseling, combining it with Reiki, combining it with journaling, all of these things tie in really well together. Doing a mindfulness meditation. So some people really enjoy listening to meditations for short periods of time, longer periods of time. Some people really enjoy just practicing their breathing. So any form of meditation that's just going to help you do that self-exploration. Practicing 8 limbs of yoga, and I put yes, all 8 of them there. A lot of times people are familiar with the asana limb of yoga, which is a physical practice. Fantastic to help us engage our body and our breathing. But there are 7 other limbs as well that can really help us with this inner exploration and inner knowing. Or any other practices that you feel called to or enthusiastic about. So building the habit of self-exploration is important. Building that habit is a lot easier when we're engaging in a practice that we are naturally excited about. So if mindfulness meditation is not for you, that's okay. That doesn't need to be your thing. Maybe journaling is, maybe reading is, maybe listening to auto affirmations, like I am affirmations, whatever it is that you are going to feel drawn to and that you can commit to practicing. And it is okay to move through these different forms of exploration. You don't need to do only one. And if you aren't sure about what to practice, just ask. There are so many wonderful healers, therapists, light workers out there who have deeply immersed themselves in these different modalities. So if one of them piques your interest, contact a practitioner, ask them, ask them questions about it, physically experience it yourself, give it a shot, and then see, does this work for me? Does it not? Right? If we don't ask, we're never going to know. So, as I showed you guys before with this model, once we can do this exploration, this self exploration, this leads to self knowing. And when we best know ourselves, this helps reveal our purpose, meaning how we positively contribute to the world, the positive impact that we can have. A lot of times when we feel lost, when we feel depressed, when we don't know what direction to move in life, it's because we are disconnected from our purpose. We don't know what it is. We might do a lot of seeking external validation, asking other people, what should I do? Looking at what works for others versus what really works for us. And so developing that exploration leads to revealing more about ourselves and ultimately revealing our purpose, which can change throughout our lives. But the more we are connected to that purpose, it's like our compass. It helps navigate us and tell us which direction to move in, to know what is right for us and what isn't right for us. The self-knowing helps reveal our motivation, which translates across our life, meaning, how am I motivated? What types of stimulus motivate me? What am I genuinely excited about? If we can develop that in one area of our life, we'll notice that it naturally starts translating to other areas. So that could be changing our eating habits, changing our exercise habits, changing what we consume through our eyes, through our ears, right? So our motivation and that inner ability to see our purpose and then move towards it, even in the face of challenges. Self-knowing helps us reveal our flow states. Again, how is it that we can engage all of the hemispheres of our brain and come into that state of flow? When we're in flow, things feel effortless and things feel enjoyable. So again, thinking back to that human condition that I mentioned earlier, where we are always seeking to increase our joy and effortlessness, going into a flow state helps us do that. So the best athletes that we see, they talk about how they're able to do these incredible things because they're in a flow state. Fantastic entrepreneurs, artists, right? They go into a state of flow and they are fully engaged, body, mind, and spirit, in whatever it is that they're doing. And nothing else around them really can disrupt what's going on. So getting into that flow state. This also helps reveal our inspiration. And when we are inspired, we are able to see solutions instead of just challenges. Right? So you might have a big dream, you might have a goal. Your goal may even just be something like, I would like to go into social situations and not feel so anxious. All right, that's our inspiration. So now, rather than only seeing the things that stand between us and that goal, we start noticing solutions. We might say something like, well, I know that I tend to get a little anxious when I go into social situations, but I can engage in my breathing. I can feel safe. I know how to create safety in myself. So that's a solution that you have found. Or any other challenges. If your idea is to start a business, right? If you're in a state of fear and you're not feeling safe, your brain is going to reveal all of the challenges that might get in the way. It's going to give you an opportunity to see your thinking patterns. If it says things like you can't make enough money or you're not going to have support, it reveals to you those beliefs, those inner core beliefs. Whereas when we are coming from a state of inspiration, we are just going to notice a lot of opportunities. This helps reveal our confidence to achieve our dreams, right? Increasing that confidence. And overall, this gives us an increased sense of joy, fulfillment, well being, and conscious living. So, to wrap that up, right, there is a fundamental purpose for your life. And to learn it requires that you transcend your known self and experience your highest potential. That experience comes not from an external world, but it comes from an internal wisdom which you already carry. Everything that you need to know, you already have within you. It's just a matter of revealing that. And to live this purposeful life, right, we reveal it by coming into safety, exploring ourselves, having self knowledge, increasing our safety, and continuing that loop. So, if there are any questions that you have, this is a great time to ask. Otherwise, you can always reach out to me after this presentation. You can find me on LinkedIn at Leilani Lima. You can email me. If you have questions around counseling, you can take a look at my website, practic-al.com. And if you have questions around consulting and how to bring these practices into your workplace, you can also go to limagrowthconsulting.com. So that is what I've got.
Yes, it's actually was incredible. I just took a lot of advices and just want to just implement it in my life. It was cool. And now I have a couple questions. I think I can just display it on the screen. Can you see it?
Yes. So we've got,
Yes.
if I have different solutions, bad habits, or useful, healthy like breathing, how to force myself to come to a useful one. This is an excellent question. And I really appreciate the fact that you included the word force here. What happens is that we often think that we need to force something, right? And I want you to just notice for a minute, when you hear or you say the word force, what happens in the body? I know that for me, there's a big sense of contraction and resistance, because none of us want to feel forced to do anything. It doesn't feel good to us. So what we can do to move from habits that don't serve us, right? And when we judge things as good or bad, that also creates resistance in our body. What we want to do is create safety. And so we can think about these as habits that make me feel good, habits that don't make me feel so good. Right? So if we want to engage in more breathing, we can start auto-suggesting to ourselves, I feel really good when I practice breathing. I know that engaging in these healthier or more useful solutions isn't always easy, but I believe in myself that I can practice this. And then we just do it. We just say, right now, for 30 seconds, I'm going to engage in this habit that leads me towards how I want to feel. So it's about being gentle with ourselves, about being compassionate with ourselves. It's about using our power in a healthy, loving, productive way rather than forcing. And often, if we find that we tend to force ourselves into things, it could be because we experienced an upbringing of being forced into things, right? Our parents perhaps not listening to us, our teachers not listening to us. We felt forced. We get to remember that as adults, we don't have to be forced to do anything. We certainly don't have to force ourselves. We can approach ourselves with compassion. So I hope that was helpful.
Yes. It's more about acceptance instead of forcing yourself, right?
Yes. And there's a great book, if anybody's interested, by Stephen Hawking called Power versus Force. And it talks a lot about this, about how we can be most productive when we engage our power rather than force. Excellent book.
Okay, and now next question. I think about reactions. A question from Allison.
Perfect. Thank you, Allison. So how to define these reactions? What's incentive call these reactions? I'm not getting a full grasp of this question. So Allison, I don't know if you can type another question in, but I'm curious if maybe by reactions you mean how we have a physiological reaction to danger. And again, it's when our brain perceives danger, it has that reaction versus a response, right? So it's just remembering that anytime our brain, it doesn't have to be our thinking brain, it's our reptilian brain. Remember what's happening back here at the brain stem. It perceives danger and it automatically triggers a response. We can get a hold of that response by engaging in our breathing and our visualization and stimulating our body.
And our next question exactly about these patterns, and I've displayed in the screen.
How to define all these patterns which perceive as dangerous? Well, I think that it's a lifetime of self-exploration. And we get to know what these patterns are when we start engaging in self-exploration, when we start paying attention to what are the things that my brain typically says to me. When I encounter a situation, how do I tend to react? Right? Do I go maybe into a social situation and have thoughts like, nobody likes me, nobody's going to listen to me, what I have to say isn't important? By listening to that, that reveals to us an internal pattern. It might be around like, nobody loves me, I'm not deserving of love, right? And that reveals a pattern of believing that maybe we are unworthy, which isn't true, but it's just a pattern. All these things are just patterns of thinking, which we have the ability to change. But we can only do that by diving deeper, exploring what they are. That's why I'm a big fan of core beliefs counseling and really looking deeply inside of what is driving our behavior. Excellent question.
Great. I think the last question here is, let me display it. Last question about some application. Alison asked you about, can you recommend maybe some application which you use for journaling, for meditation, or some other practice?
Yeah, so I don't use any particular apps like on my phone or anything. But for me, this has been over 14 years of practicing and trying these things. And it's really about discovering what has worked for me. So I love writing. It feels, rather than typing, my body responds really well to physically having a pen and paper and writing things out. Um, if you aren't sure about journaling prompts, send me an email. I will send you an inner child journaling prompt worksheet, which can help you to start engaged in that inner child connection, the reparenting, and some of these journaling practices. So you can always reach out to me after this, and I'm happy to give further recommendations that might be specifically aligned with you.
Great. I think the last question for myself.
Yeah.
I think how to teach myself to do all these small things for everyday basis. It's I mean, just it's so hard to do. You understand it's simple. You spend on it maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, but it's hard to just force. But I understand it's about acceptance, not forcing, but it's hard to make a habit.
Yeah. Habits can be hard to develop. So I recommend starting small, right? Don't start with thinking you need to do all of these things at once. Start with something really simple. So when you wake up in the morning, what is the first thing that you do? For a lot of people, they reach for their phone, right? They go on social
Yes.
media. An hour later, suddenly that they've just consumed a lot of other people's information. So here's a simple practice. When you wake up in the morning, spend just 10 minutes. Say, like, I'm not going to touch my phone for 10 minutes. For 10 minutes, I'm just going to engage in my breathing. And I'm going to think about the things I want to experience in the day, the positive things that I want to experience. So for me, if I maybe have an upcoming business meeting that day, I will imagine, I'll see the scenario of me having a meeting with that person and it going really well. And by me doing that, I start to develop these really positive feelings in my heart, in my body, right? And all of a sudden, I'm feeling a lot of joy because I'm imagining a really positive thing happening. I don't get out of bed until I have created that in myself. If you don't have anything to look forward to for the day, practice a gratitude exercise, which is think about somebody. It could be a person, it could be an animal that you love. Somebody that when you think about them, you feel a lot of joy in your heart. So for me, like that's my dog. I love my dog so much. And we start every morning with a lot of this love, right? So think about somebody or something that you love. See them, imagine them, think about embracing them, and allow those feelings of love and gratitude to well up, to develop in your body, and just stay in bed until you reach that state. I promise you, it will not take you more than 5 or 10 minutes. Just start with this. You're going to see a dramatic change in your life. Practice this for 21 days. Just challenge yourself. 21 days, 10 minutes in the morning of feeling good. And in 21 days, come tell me how it is that you're feeling and everything else that you've noticed has changed.
I will. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Diana, for this incredible presentation. We will send this presentation on email. So keep in touch, and thank you guys. Thank you, Lana, again.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
everybody, for questions, and thank you, Dimitri, for inviting me. Have a good one.
Yes.